What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this week, what might cause some volatility, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off, if we kind of look back over this last week, SoFi has had a fairly good run, as with the broader market. A lot of optimism associated to rate cuts, and this week is going to really test that. So starting off, you do have retail sales coming out on Tuesday. Aside from that, it's going to be a hell of a lot of Fed speakers. So again, like I said, a lot of those Fed speakers could make things very, very good, or could make things somewhat sketchy, because right now the market is under the interpretation that there is going to be 2 rate cuts, one of which is going to be September the 18th. So there is right now a 90.3% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut. And then for the November 7th meeting, there is a 56.3% likelihood of another 25 basis point cut. So back to back, that is what is really fueling a lot of growth stocks, including SoFi. And so potentially with all these Fed speakers on kind of the docket, or whatever the hell you want to call it, for this week, or just speaking, that is going to really switch things up. So there's going to be a nice continuation of the momentum nonetheless, but at the same time, a lot of this could change that. So just anticipate that. And the first sign of weakness coming from the Feds, or just the hopium disappearing, you're going to see shorts really double the hell down when it comes to SoFi. So right now, 17.76% of the free float's being shorted, works out to be 184.4 million shares overall are being shorted. And there has been some abnormal situations that's been happening the last several trading days, because if you look right here, shorts have been oddly returning some shares over this last little bit, but yet you do see cost to borrow minimum negative. So that does once again mean there's a broker out there physically paying people to short SoFi. I've already brought that up in previous videos on how there's that and many other forms of manipulation, but normally what has happened, this is a one-day event, and then following day shorts double down, but that hasn't been the case. So this has been, I think, 3 consecutive trading days of cost to borrow minimum being negative. So once again, I don't know if that does mean that some brokers really trying to drum up shorts. Just maybe they're waiting for the market to cool down slightly. It's just very, very random. So once again, that is something to kind of keep in mind. One thing that could really help SoFi though is the fear and greed index right now is at 56. So under the greed category, so people's appetite for risk is definitely going to be on the table this week. So again, that could really stand to benefit it. And there hasn't been, and there's so far nothing really planned for this week associated to SoFi. So no interviews, no news, nothing like that. They do have their earnings. That's roughly around 2 weeks from now. So I think there's going to be maybe some optimism associated to that. 1 week ago, I was pretty much under the impression that there'd be no FOMO kicking into SoFi, but the market had other plans for SoFi. Just clearly there's still some level of manipulation, because even looking at the one-day chart right at here, so $7, it was at 2:53 Central Time, so 7 minutes before the market closed, and it was at roughly $7. So in case you guys don't know, when it comes to options, if it's at the strike price or above, so if it was at 7, all those would be in the money. And so when it comes to it, well, you do see that manipulation just pushing it right down, and that was actually short. So I'll give you a quick overview of that. So looking at the intraday, it doesn't seem like much, but looking at this teal line, it bumps up slightly right there. Last 15 minutes, that was shorts just bringing it down. So fuck the shorts, very annoying stuff that they do. Pardon my French on a side note. But yeah, there's going to be some manipulation this week as well, because when it comes to options, this is the current layout for the open interest. So this upcoming week's chain, so July the 19th, is a monthly chain. So a little bit more activity. You can already tell based on the volume. And as I always say, typically the first Monday or the first trading day of the week, this does jump up by like 40%, give or take. So right now there's 15,000 in open interest at that 650 strike price, 47,000 at that 7, 8,000 at that 750. So there's already a very strong wall at 7. So you're going to have market makers and shorts really trying to suppress SoFi below that $7 mark. So just kind of keep that in mind. For this week though, or this past week that just was expiring on July the 12th, you do have 23,000 in open interest at that 650 strike price. So that is going to be covered most likely on Monday. Some people have been asking me, how do I know that they cover on Monday? Well, that's just based on my experience. Yes, they could cover on Friday, but at the same time, it's typically on Monday and usually not during pre-market, because pre-market is very low volume. So for instance, if market makers want to cover right now 2.3 million shares, which they'll have to do, like to do that pre-market would really cause the stock price to go up, because pre-market and after hours are kind of like the wild, wild west, right? Like if someone wants to buy that level of shares, it's going to do like a lot of crazy swings. So they'd rather just wait till the market does open. So as soon as the market opens on Monday, just watch for a very quick blip up, and that is them covering. That's just at least based on my experience. But once again, this week you're going to have a lot of kind of battle at that stage. Looking here at the delta for this upcoming week, so July the 19th, just at the call options, you do see that big money is anticipating for it to kind of retrace back to the 650. And because there right now is a 85% likelihood that it's going to settle and around that 650 mark. So this is one thing that you can always kind of look at, is the delta. But then again, options is just more of a sentiment, so it doesn't necessarily move the stock price. It's just, again, something to keep in mind, and what bigger entities are potentially feeling is coming this week. Over this last several trading days though, you have seen a abnormal amount of buying coming from institutions. So you do have that FOMO side of it. So 1.58 million in, or just based on that one transaction, 7.78. These are all the transactions occurring on the secondary market, in case you guys don't know at this stage. I do bring this up quite frequently, but 2.15 million. So you've seen a nice bump up in institutions paying attention to it this last week. Again, largely because of the optimism associated to rate cuts, but still, I don't think anyone really cares. I don't think any SoFi investors are going to complain on why SoFi is going up. All that matters is institutions are buying. So that's kind of a good takeaway, but some strong support and resistance points at this stage to watch for, with it at $6.97. It is trading between this pivot and this R1. So 675 is a very strong support. On the flip side, $7.21 is going to be the next strong resistance. That is aside from that $7 mark that is brought on because of options. So SoFi does have a lot of heavy resistance above that. So once again, just kind of keep that in mind. If it does really pull back, then just watch for 628 to hold, and then 599. Well, definitely not 599. I don't see that happening unless somehow they start talking on, one of the feds start talking on how interest rates could be like raised, and I feel like that would really mess up the market at this stage. But when it comes to the chart itself, so it is above that 50-day moving average, and so like I've said in the past, historically speaking, whenever SoFi does close above that 50-day moving average for 2 consecutive trading days, it does result in typically a 30% bump up in the stock price. So I think Monday is going to be a very key day based on the technicals. Looking at stochastic, you do see a nice bullish deviation, so white line above the red. It is, if it does continue on its trajectory, it is going to be seen as somewhat overbought soon. So that means the first sign of weakness, you are going to see a pullback, as what typically does happen with SoFi, like right here and here. But nonetheless, I feel like the technicals are looking fairly optimistic for SoFi, and a number of retail investors have been getting in. So all in all, somewhat mixed results. So I feel like the options activity is somewhat optimistic. Technicals are looking fairly good. Shorts doing nothing over this last little bit is very random. Again, shows that they might have something up their sleeve, or they're just feeling the pinch of the recent run that has happened, and maybe they might be starting to return some shares as FOMO kicks into SoFi's Q2 earnings. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Give yourself a shout out if you have been buying, if you've been selling as well. Let me know where you guys see SoFi. Throw your predictions in the comments below. I do feel that there's going to be a quick spike to probably around that 750 range, but there might be a retracement. Has nothing to do necessarily with negative aspects of SoFi. It's just whenever a stock runs up this much, there's going to be certain levels of profit taking. And honestly, looking here, of all the Fed speakers, I find it very statistically hard to believe that one of these individuals isn't going to really fuck up, again, pardon my French, and just say something stupid. Even going back over here, I was kind of researching what they typically have said in the past, and there's one guy, historically doesn't really talk all that much, but when he does, he just randomly talks about inflation being too high. This time last month, when he did do, I think, his last speech, he just said that inflation is too high and that potentially, given the data, like they might need to postpone rate cuts. It's a crazy roller coaster, and I think there's just too much dependence based on this. And as I've said in the past, I think there's just too much dependence on monetary policy as of late. And so yeah, let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that, and hopefully everyone has a good weekend or has had a good weekend. With all that though, appreciate all of you watching.